My mother-in-law poisoned my drink at dinner, but I switched glasses with her father and watched him pass out in her arms. She loathed me. Not in the dramatic way you might read in some paperback thriller where knives flash and tempers erupt. No, her hatred was precise, measured, and almost surgical. From the day I married her son, Olivia Raines played the role of a smiling saboteur. She wore pearls and spoke in soft judgments wrapped in compliments, the kind that sounded polite until the sting came a second later. My name was never just Sophia in her mouth. It was always followed by a pause, a sigh, or an insinuation. At first, I brushed it off. My husband, Michael, was blind to her behavior, or maybe not blind, just unwilling to admit it. She had a history of controlling every detail in his life, right down to the type of cologne he wore and the brand of socks he bought. So naturally, when I entered the picture and carved space into his life that wasn't hers, she took it as an invasion, not a union. Over the years, the snide comments evolved. Gossip found its way to Michael about things I never said, looks I never gave, calls I never made. She'd tell neighbors I was cold, that I didn't want children, that I was draining Michael's bank account. None of it true, none of it said directly to me. That was Olivia's game. She never confronted, only corroded. But she underestimated me. I watched. I listened. I endured, yes, but I remembered everything. Every little manipulation, every tilted glance, every carefully placed wedge between my husband and me. So when she invited us to dinner that Friday night, an intimate family affair, nothing grand, just 10 of us around her gleaming mahogany table, I accepted with a smile. I knew she was planning something. There had been a shift, a new sharpness in her smile when she'd called, a strange eagerness. She never liked to host unless there was an audience. But this night, she kept it tight. Immediate family only. Michael, me, her husband Gerald, their daughter Anna, her son-in-law, and most importantly, her father, Reginald Mercer. Reginald was a relic of old money and older customs, sharp-tongued, iron-backed, and fully devoted to his daughter. She was his jewel, his legacy. And I had no doubt Olivia idolized him the same way a priest venerates a saint. That's why when I saw her slip something into my tea glass with the sleight of hand only years of practice could teach, I knew exactly what I had to do. She didn't see me watching her. I had angled my face toward Anna, laughing at something shallow and forgettable, while my eyes remained fixed on Olivia's movements. It was brief, almost nothing. Her hand passed over my tea glass, and in that moment a single drop from a tiny vial found its way into the dark red swirl. She let the bottle fall back into her clutch with the grace of someone brushing off lint. A practiced move, no hesitation. The glass sat there, innocent, waiting. She had timed it well. Everyone was distracted. Michael and Gerald were locked in a debate about some merger Michael's firm was pushing through. Anna was scrolling her phone under the table. Reginald, proud in his tailored navy suit, was raising his glass to offer a toast before the meal. That was her opening. My end, had she gotten her way. But I had already made a plan. I had suspected she was going to try something. Over the last 3 weeks she had become bolder. She would comment on how pale I looked in front of Michael, suggest I visit a specialist. I found the same bottle of white tea used for dinner once sitting on my doorstep with a handwritten note. Thought you might enjoy this, darling. No signature. Just that icy scrawl I'd know anywhere. So I came prepared. I watched her, calm and steady, as she seated herself beside her father, setting her own glass just inches from his. They were nearly identical. Same shape, same fill, same distance from the plate. It took no more than 3 seconds. I stood to adjust my chair, knocked my napkin under the table in a deliberate stumble, and leaned down just enough to let my fingers switch the 2 glasses. No one noticed. Not even her. I picked up the now safe glass, my expression unchanged. Her eyes flicked toward me. For a heartbeat, our gazes locked. She was already savoring the outcome, my collapse, my humiliation. She had made sure the toast came before the meal, so whatever she'd slipped into the drink wouldn't be masked by the food. Timing was everything. Reginald stood and cleared his throat, commanding silence like a king addressing his court. To family, he began, voice booming. To legacies, and to knowing who truly belongs at your table. The irony nearly made me laugh. Olivia raised her glass beside him, smiling with sharp precision. And then he drank. A slow sip. The entire room mirrored him in turn. Michael, Anna, Gerald, me. Everyone drank, except Olivia. She paused with the glass just at her lips, her eyes flickering, perhaps trying to enjoy the moment a little longer. The poison worked fast. Too fast. Reginald barely had time to finish the toast before his words slurred into a garbled murmur. His hand trembled. The glass tipped slightly as he gripped the edge of the table. A sudden breath, heavy and sharp, punched from his lungs, then his knees buckled and he crashed down with the full weight of an aging body striking hardwood. Gasps erupted. Anna screamed. Michael jumped from his chair. Gerald was already on his knees, trying to prop him up. And Olivia, my dear mother-in-law, was frozen. Her tea glass, untouched, still in her hand. Her father lay collapsed in a heap at her feet. Foam pooled at the corner of his mouth. His eyes rolled back. His pulse, if he had one, was sinking fast. And she cracked. She dropped the glass. It shattered, lavender tea bleeding across the floor like spilled blood. Her voice, always so careful, twisted into something raw. "Dad? Dad?" I stood perfectly still, calm, watching. It took her less than a second to realize something was wrong, something beyond the medical emergency. She looked up and her gaze locked on mine again. Not confusion now. Panic. Pure, skin-prickling panic. I didn't smile. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. Because she understood. She knew. Somehow, some way, the plan had shifted beneath her feet. The victim she chose had walked away from the gallows, and someone else had taken the fall. The ambulance came within minutes. Gerald's voice trembled on the phone with 911. Michael tried to keep Olivia calm, but she shoved him away, clawing toward the medics as they loaded Reginald onto the stretcher. His heart was still beating, barely. They said he had a chance, but it was slim. Whatever he'd ingested had already ravaged his nervous system. The police came not long after, and I, ever the picture of concern, gave my statement. I'd seen nothing, only heard the crash, the gasp, the panic. Olivia, still shaking, said the same. But her story started to unravel as the officers asked to examine all glasses, and one was missing. The one she'd dropped, shattered beyond recovery. Suspiciously so. They took us all to the station that night. Just routine, they said. But her hands wouldn't stop trembling. Her eyes darted around like an animal cornered, and I said nothing, because revenge didn't require a grand gesture. It didn't need me to scream accusations or play victim. It only needed one thing, the truth. Unraveled, naked, unavoidable. And that truth had a bitter taste. Just like the tea in Reginald's glass. The waiting room was cold. Not physically, but in that way only a hospital could feel. Empty, artificial, soaked in the kind of forced calm that hums just beneath fluorescent lights and sterile white walls. The night dragged on, thick with unsaid things. No one looked at me. No one spoke to Olivia. After the ambulance had taken her father away and the police had asked their questions, we ended up in a square-shaped room lined with outdated magazines and a coffee machine that gurgled but never worked. Michael sat beside me, fingers laced, knuckles tight, his knee bouncing in an erratic rhythm. Anna was curled up in the farthest seat from her mother, arms crossed, face unreadable. Gerald paced back and forth, glancing at his phone, then at the hallway, then back to his phone. None of them dared to speak first. Olivia sat alone in the corner, the chair too stiff, her posture too rigid. She wasn't crying. She wasn't breathing heavily. She was calculating. I could see it. She was trying to find the flaw in what had happened, the gap, the slip, the loose thread that turned her plan inside out. Her fingers twitched at her sides as if the muscles in her hands still remembered the feel of the dropper she'd palmed. She was unraveling by the minute. Not from grief, but from uncertainty. Her perfect plan had slipped from her grasp like sand, and she had no idea how. The doctor arrived just after midnight. Gray coat, clipboard tucked under his arm, expression blank. When he said the words, "stable for now," the tension in the room shifted slightly, but not in relief. Reginald had survived the initial seizure. He was sedated, unconscious, being flushed of whatever toxin had slipped through his bloodstream. They were still analyzing the compound. It wasn't something routine. It wasn't a medication overdose or a simple allergic reaction. That much was already clear. What exactly did he ingest? Gerald asked, stepping forward with the posture of a man trying to stay composed. We can't be sure yet, the doctor said, tone clinical. It's something with neurotoxic properties. We've contacted poison control, and they're running tests. We'll know more soon. Olivia said nothing. Not a word. She didn't even blink. I leaned forward slightly, not enough to draw attention, but enough to observe her reaction. She was holding something back, not fear, control. She was trying not to react too fast or too little. She knew eyes were on her even if no one said it out loud. A woman's instinct sharpens in moments like this. She was balancing on a wire and she felt it fraying. The police arrived again just after the doctor left. This time, not just to check in. A detective was with them. Detective Calhoun. Late 40s, unshaven, bored eyes, too many cases and too little patience. He didn't introduce himself with warmth. He looked around the room and started asking questions that weren't gentle. Who was seated where? Who poured the wine? Did anyone notice anything unusual before the toast? Did anyone drink from Reginald Mercer's glass other than him? He didn't even wait for answers to sink in before moving on to the next. Olivia kept her answers short, controlled. She avoided details. She said she hadn't touched anyone else's drink. She claimed she didn't notice anything odd until her father collapsed. Her voice was steady, but her eyes betrayed her. She kept glancing at me, even when she tried not to. She was trying to gauge whether I would speak. I didn't. Not then. There was no need. The detective asked about the broken tea glass. Where is it? He asked. It's shattered, she answered too quickly. I dropped it. How? He asked. She paused. I was reaching for him. When he fell, it slipped. He stared at her a little too long. Where's the stem? The base? No one answered. The pieces weren't in any of the cleanup cloths. They weren't in the trash. Someone had taken them. She had taken them, or tried to. I'd seen her clutching her napkin oddly before the paramedics arrived. She must have pocketed the glass fragments and flushed them or stashed them somewhere. Michael finally spoke. Why would someone do this to him? Calhoun didn't answer. He just looked at Olivia again. Not accusing, just watching. That was worse. The room emptied slowly. Anna left first, muttering something about needing air. Gerald followed the doctor to check on Reginald. Michael excused himself to get coffee, though we both knew he wouldn't drink it. And then it was just me and Olivia again. She didn't speak. She just turned to me with that hollow stare, as if trying to will the truth from my lips. I saw you, I said, voice low. Her face tightened, just a flicker, barely there. Saw me what? She asked, like she was ready for a fight, but her voice wasn't quite steady enough. In the dining room, before the toast, you touched my glass. You must be mistaken. No, I said, leaning forward, my tone careful. I'm not. She didn't respond. I saw your hand move over it. I saw the drop. I know what you did. I just didn't stop you. The silence was so sharp it could have cut steel. You think this is clever? She finally asked, voice brittle. Do you think you're some kind of hero now? No, I said, sitting back. I didn't save anyone. I just gave the truth room to breathe. Her expression flickered with something darker. Not guilt, not regret, contempt. You think anyone will believe you? They don't have to, I said. They'll believe the lab reports. They'll believe the poison wasn't random. They'll believe the glass you dropped was never recovered. And eventually, they'll believe the one person who had a reason. She looked down at her hands. Her fingers were still twitching. You've always wanted to ruin everything, she said almost quietly. You came into this family like a weed. No, I said. You tried to poison your daughter-in-law. You just didn't expect your father to drink first. Something in her posture shifted then. For a moment, I thought she might confess. Not because she regretted it, but because she was furious at herself. She hadn't planned for this outcome. She hadn't anticipated losing control so completely. But she didn't say anything more. By the next afternoon, the toxin had been identified. Aconitine. A refined extract of monkshood. Old-fashioned but lethal. It caused ventricular arrhythmia, numbing of extremities, vomiting, seizures. Easy to hide in wine, bitter but masked by tannins, rare, traceable. Michael read the report first. He didn't understand most of it, but the part he did understand was the word intentional. Not accidental, not a misdose. Someone had administered it deliberately. He turned to me then, and his face told me he had started putting the pieces together. "You think someone meant to poison him?" he asked. "No," I said. "I think someone meant to poison me." The words sat between us like a live wire. His face went pale. "Who?" "You know who." He didn't answer, but I saw it, the moment he knew I was right. Later that week, the police called again. Calhoun wanted Olivia to come in for another interview. They hadn't made an arrest, not yet, but they weren't satisfied with the inconsistencies in her story. They were building something, a case, a timeline, a motive. She refused to go. Instead, she called a lawyer. That's when Michael changed, not all at once, but something inside him started to crack. His mother had always been the puppeteer. Now he saw the strings, and they were soaked in poison. She texted him, called, left voicemails. None of them sounded panicked. All of them sounded rehearsed. She didn't say she was innocent. She said she was misunderstood. She tried to twist the story. She said maybe I had poisoned the wine. Maybe I had meant to frame her. Maybe I had staged it all to ruin her. But she didn't know something I had already done. The day after the dinner, I took the tablecloth to a private lab. The tea stain from her broken glass had soaked through to the fabric. They found the same compound there, aconitine. That cloth told a story she couldn't rewrite. I didn't tell her I had it. I was waiting for her to push too far, for her to try again, because someone like Olivia doesn't stop after a failure. She regroups, she studies, she strikes harder, and I was ready, not to defend, but to finish what she started. 3 weeks passed, long enough for the hospital monitors to stop beeping, long enough for Olivia to bury the father she nearly murdered by mistake. The funeral was quiet, tidy. No dramatic tears or impassioned speeches, only a soft drizzle over gray stone and umbrellas shaking in the wind. Olivia wore black silk tailored to precision. Her posture didn't waver, not even as the casket was lowered. Michael stood beside me, hands in his pockets. His jaw clenched so tight I heard it grind. Gerald looked aged, hollowed from the inside. Anna didn't cry. She stared at the hole in the ground as if trying to imagine how deep it really went. No one said what we all knew. Afterward, people dispersed quickly. No wake, no reception. Olivia didn't invite anyone back to the house. She disappeared into her car, closed the door, and left before the priest had even collected his coat. But the real service, the reckoning, had already been set into motion. The forensic report on the glassware was finalized. Traces of aconitine found on the tablecloth aligned with the tea from the shattered glass. That single thread tied the poison directly to the glass Olivia dropped. No other glass showed contamination. The lab confirmed the compound's purity suggested it had been extracted, not accidentally ingested or naturally consumed. They traced a specific rare strain of monkshood, grown primarily in a botanical garden outside of Hartford. That greenhouse kept visitor records. Olivia had signed in under her maiden name 3 months prior. The police waited. Calhoun built the case piece by piece. He requested surveillance from the night of the dinner. Olivia's kitchen had a camera facing the side entry. At exactly 6:47 p.m., she walked in with her clutch. At 6:51, she opened the freezer, then retrieved a small vial, already chilled and sealed. She poured tea for everyone except herself, then slipped something into one of the glasses before exiting the frame. No audio, just movement. But it was enough. A warrant followed. Olivia was arrested on a Thursday morning. Michael received the call from the station. His voice was low when he told me, "She's in custody, charged with attempted murder." The words didn't carry satisfaction, just finality. Her attorney tried to frame it as a misunderstanding, claimed she had stored essential oils in that vial, alleged it was a vitamin mixture, accidentally dropped. But the toxicology reports crushed that excuse. The dose was precise, lethal, not medicinal, too concentrated to be incidental. The lab even identified chemical markers used in refining aconitine in its synthetic form. This wasn't clumsy or improvised. It was calculated. Her bail was denied. In court, she said nothing, not a plea, not an explanation. She stared ahead like the walls would disappear if she just looked hard enough. The prosecution painted her as manipulative, cold, jealous of her son's marriage. The defense tried to shift the blame, even suggested I had a motive to frame her, citing tension, past arguments, and a fabricated account of a supposed affair I was having. But truth doesn't need theatrics. The broken tea glass sealed her fate. Forensic analysts matched fingerprints. Her palm had been on the base, her prints on the neck. Mine were only on the stem of the switched glass. It wasn't even close. The jury returned a verdict in less than 4 hours. Guilty. Attempted murder in the first degree. Sentenced to 25 years without the possibility of parole. The courtroom didn't gasp. There were no tears, no outbursts. Just Olivia, stone-faced, walking in cuffs as if they didn't belong to her. When it ended, Michael didn't speak on the drive home. The silence wasn't cold. It was heavy. Something had broken. He didn't cry. He didn't say he missed her. He only asked one question. "When did you know?" I told him the truth. "I knew when she handed me that bottle of tea weeks ago, the one she left on our doorstep." He nodded once. That was enough for him. We didn't talk about her after that. 6 months later, Michael and I moved. Different city, smaller house, fewer rooms, less noise. I started working again. He changed firms. We didn't carry the past into conversations. We didn't deny it happened, but we didn't let it define what came next. I visited Reginald's grave once. Alone. I stood there for a while, not saying much, just looking at the name carved in stone. A man who raised a woman so desperate for control that she destroyed herself trying to keep it. There were no flowers at his headstone, no offerings, no sign anyone else had come. I left a single glass of lavender tea on the ground, untouched, unpoisoned, just there to mark the truth. Because in the end, I didn't need revenge. I didn't need to scream or shout or burn it all down. I just had to wait long enough for her own hands to betray her. And when they did, all I had to do was watch. The world did the rest.